Hey everybody, welcome to Thursday night's Gossip Pod. It's Thursday, May 14th, 9 p.m. Eastern. I am Tim Polari here on Get Vocal, being joined by Lance Reenstein. What's up, Lance?
What is going on? Things couldn't be better. Be here yet again on this Thursday night with two amazing guests.
Yes. Absolutely. We've got Saleem Beth Calderon here joining us tonight. What is going on?
Hello. Good to meet everyone face to face, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we are being joined by Michelle Kazube.
Yeah.
Kazube.
I'm still not sure.
Okay.
Just Milo.
Old friend Michelle, friend of the show and a real instrumental figure in private investigations for the missing. And we know that you have other engagements with other podcasters, not to be named Josh Hallmark. Oops. But, so we've been doing this thing with you, which is on this date. And for the intros of our Missing More Murray shows, on occasion, we will read an on this date, which is a missing individual that has come to private investigations for the missing. You have sort of vetted all of the emails and you go through them and you present us with a case that stands out. And we try to do it every week. Sometimes we forget because we're human. But what is the topic? Who is the on this date for this week?
So this was an on this date that was taken from some research we did from the Charlie Project and NamUs. And our on this date this week, on behalf of PIs for the Missing, is a gentleman named Kenneth James Williams. He was 29 years old. He disappeared on May 14th, 2011. He was driving a black 2005 Ford 500. He had borrowed from his cousin to go to his mother's house in, I might say this wrong, but Monica, Pennsylvania. Prior to his disappearance, he had gone to visit his sister and his mother, and he had told them that he was having some kind of encounter or altercation or fight with a person. He was very upset, but he didn't really go into any details with his family. So on May 14th, he left his mother's house around 5:30 a.m. in that car. The car is found approximately 100 miles away in, I'm going to say this wrong too, probably, Monongalia County, West Virginia. So they found the car unlocked. They found the wallet, the keys, and no Kenneth. So Kenneth has been missing ever since. He is between 6 foot and 6'1" to 140, 160 pounds. Due to his height, the police noticed that the seat was pushed up pretty close to the steering wheel. And it would not be something that a person, of his height or stature would be able to get into the car. So Kenneth has black hair and brown eyes. He was wearing a tan t-shirt, dark colored, long sleeve flannel jacket, tan khaki pants, sneakers, and a black winter hat. Kenneth had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He required medication, which he might not have had with him. Kenneth had also been a business major at Florida A&M University and Robert Morris Universities. Kenneth was also known to gamble, and he also played cards at people's houses and things like that. So there is a ton of links and information and phone numbers on the PI for the Missing, Private Investigations for the Missing Facebook page, our Instagram, and our Twitter. So, please take a look at us, come to the Facebook page, join the discussion, share. That is the most important thing, because for someone like Kenneth, for his case, it did not get a lot of media attention, and it could really benefit from all of you out there sharing his case, sharing his story. And you can do that by going to our Facebook and our Twitter, PI for the Missing, and the Instagram, Investigations for the Missing. So please, if you're out there, support PI for the Missing and share some of our stories.
Great. Thanks a lot, Michelle. All right. Yeah, great job. And you can check.
I'm going to jump out of this box so that way, anybody else who wants to come in and ask some questions.
Okay.
But I will be here in the chat. So it's good to see you guys, and it's good to see you, Saleem.
Nice.
I
to
know,
see you, too.
Michelle. Good to finally meet you. Hopefully, we'll get a drink soon. Oh,
Tell Josh, tell Josh Hallmark we said hi.
So if anyone is unfamiliar with Michelle's work, we did a 2-part episode with her on Missing More Murray about a month ago. So check those episodes out. They're great. She's a prosecutor. She does a lot of amazing work. And so we are being joined by Celine Beth, and we can open the fourth box up in a little bit. But Celine, we want to talk about your documentary a little bit before we do. Let's get some of this out. What's going on? Tell us.
oh, so much has changed since we last chatted.
Oh, speaking of when we last chatted, do you know that was Halloween? Or it was like the day before Halloween that we released that episode?
Yeah, exactly. I was just looking on there. I was actually just talking to Sarah Kalin and Jen Tisdale about when I last spoke to you guys. And I was like, well, a lot has changed since that conversation. So, I mean, I'm not just talking about the pandemic. I'm talking about actually what has happened with the project. So,
Gotcha.
So it's no longer Theodore. It's called Killing Theodore. Killing the man, the myth, and the legend of Ted Bundy. That is our main focus now. Really what we are focusing on, everything is kind of the same that we had discussed prior. And if you haven't checked out that interview, please do. It's one of my better ones. But we are going to talk a lot about what has happened in the past 2 years, like with the Bundy mania, and kind of deconstruct all of that, because I think now everyone is so sick of him, including myself, which I needed a break. The last like 3 months, I've just been like, you know what? I just don't even want to think about it, talk about it. It needs to go away while all of this is happening. And just barely 2 weeks ago, we're back on track, and we are going to spend a little bit more time filming. I sent an email out to all of my participants and let them know about the change, and if they want to contribute more, and they do. So they want to give their perspective now of the Bundy mania that happened, and some of them want to discuss how they've been portrayed in the media since then, because a lot of them were seen in a movie that was on Netflix and, and some of the other documentaries and whatnot and what happened. So we really want to just, again, bring that focus to what's important and not losing sight of the victims. And I've also been tipped off in recent months that more PDs are opening those cold cases related to Bundy. So where I only had a couple before, now I'm getting more information. So obviously, again, the pandemic is kind of slowing down their investigations, but my goal is to get back out to some of those states and go and look at all the updates. Again, looking at new DNA and what they're doing with their families. There's a lot happening behind the scenes. And it's not just about Bundy, because everyone's sick of Bundy, including myself. And I don't want to talk about him, that much anymore.
So Celine,
like I said, I'm really excited.
So Celine, tell us, Ted Bundy, he represented himself in court. Is that what happened?
I think so.
I'm just kidding.
And he was really handsome, right?
Yeah, these are the same
jokes.
Yeah,
I think he's handsome. We talked about last time. Yeah.
It's just literally a playback of
exact same joke. Yeah.
Flashback.
Yep. Morph has a good question there. Was the choice to change the name yours, or did someone else, or was it a group effort?
It was, well, I had been wanting to change it, I think, since I came back from Death Becomes Us. I really just started having a lot of bad dreams about the name Theodore. But my amazing co-creator and producer, Timothy John Saris, we got on the phone one night and we're bouncing, going back and forth, and he said the name Killing Theodore. And I know we've already started receiving protests for that title from the Bundy heads. So, yeah, I started seeing the Bundy heads. Yes, these are hardcore Bundy fans. So now they're not excited for it. but they were never going to be excited for it once they realized what it was about.
I'm curious. Not sorry to interrupt. I'm curious. How did these Bundy heads contact you? Through Facebook, through email,
Twitter.
Both, Twitter,
Instagram. They have a hashtag starting protest killing Theodore. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Really?
So
well, that's good.
There's massive fans everywhere.
That's good publicity. Though. People protest.
Yeah, no press is bad press.
Yeah.
No, exactly. So that's fine. But yeah, so that's kind of how it came about, and I'm happy with the new title. It's a little out there, but yeah, why not? Why not kill the apple?
Yeah,
like
seriously.
So, yeah.
Once again, I was my girlfriend and I were sitting on the couch the other night, and once again I see a trailer for yet another Ted Bundy documentary that is I don't even want to say the title because I don't want to like perpetuate this, but the title of it is it insinuates that he seduces and he's a ladies' man and a charmer, and ladies just can't stop but to, go goo-goo over him like the Beatles.
Right.
And I said to my girlfriend was like, what is the deal with that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like sometimes they get tattoos of his bite mark on him because they're obsessed. And it's really hard to wrap your head around that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a hardcore guy. I'm a cold-blooded guy.
Super hardcore.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't.
No idea. You guys have no idea how hardcore he is.
No idea.
But it's true. But that's the feedback that, we want to talk about, because I've been, honestly, in the last year, I have been in so many different like Facebook groups pertaining to true crime, and just trying to get that feedback. And I think it's important and it's crucial to talk about that. But you have, again, with the Zac Efron movie, a lot of people were then glamorizing him in a way that he wasn't that attractive, like Zac Efron. He didn't have abs. He was, like all of that encompassed in one. That's the problematic source of it. And I teach dance to young girls, and these young girls started coming up to me, and they were so excited when they realized who Ted Bundy was. But again, they have the perception of Zac Efron, not the real monster. So, I'm sick of that shit. I don't want, the little kids I teach to sit there and think that I'm doing it. So you're also going to get a lot of insight from me and kind of our journey with this, because we were a part of that glamorization when we first started. That we're going to own that. We're going to own our merch that we had. We completely shut all of that down. We've learned a lot in the past 3 years, and we want to bring it back again to owning what our part was in this glamorization. And again, like, we want this to be the final one. Like, we're fine being the slow tortoise at the end, but the purpose is solely because we want it to end there. Like, we don't want to hear about it anymore after that. So I got some pretty, exciting information yesterday. And so we are really now looking to push this maybe even into 2021. Obviously, the pandemic is slowing a lot of stuff down. I'm sure you guys know, with filming. So we're in no rush. But like I said, as I've always said, if it takes us longer because we want to look into these other cold cases, then we're going to take our time. I don't want to rush that, and I want to make sure it's covered properly. So I'm not here to crank out another Bundy documentary. I'm cranking out the right information.
Yeah, that's so well said. Being the slow tortoise is fine as long as what you bring in at the end is the most quality product that you can.
Right.
Did you watch the Zac Efron version? Did you watch that?
Oh, I went to the world premiere.
Yes.
I
what was that?
At the very premiere at Sundance. The very first showing ever. I was there. So I saw Zac Efron. Yeah. Nope. I was there, baby.
How was it?
I saw it before everyone else. No comment. I've been told by my team I'm not allowed to comment on it.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't make it through it. Did you see it, Tim? I forgot if we talked about it.
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah. It was okay.
It was okay. It was just okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're so right. You get Zac Efron there, and all of a sudden it elevates Ted Bundy to something like that's what's in people's memories now is this hybrid between Ted Bundy and Zac Efron. So, you know, whatever that turns into. I personally think that Rick Moranis would have been a lot better as Ted Bundy. And that would have ended it.
No, yeah. Oh, Rick Moranis, man.
Oh
That's
man, I see what you're doing there with the kind of stunt casting. I like that. We could really get into it. He might be a little old right now for Bundy, or maybe like a version where Bundy like never got executed and he's still alive in prison. Then you get Rick Moranis. That could be a movie. Celine, let's do that one. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the industry churning them out.
Oh, you know what it could be like? Did you guys ever see Bubba Hotep where Elvis was in a nursing home? It could be a version of that.
No.
Like Ted Bundy was never actually executed, but now he's like playing a part in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids 4. Everyone's like, you know, and he's like, I'm not really Rick Moranis.
I'm Kato Kaelin.
I love that.
Yeah, or he could be in Pan Man 3. That could be a thing. But
That's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I like this.
Really gotta tip the old cap to you for having the courage to make a movie, a documentary focused solely on the victims. Your marketing currently doesn't even feature his face, and the title change is absolutely brilliant. And I can see how people who are Bundy heads would be mad at that because they never want this to end. You know why? Because they'll never find another Ted Bundy. There's no Dahmer heads, right? Because Tim and I were talking about this. No one find, you can't say I think that a guy who preyed upon a homosexual community and cannibalized them, that you can't say that's sexy, right? Like that's just not. I mean, you're a maniac if you say that.
That's not what you said when we were talking about this off air.
No, weird. That was the alternative point of view.
Yeah. Huh.
Exactly.
So how you flip that anyway. No, absolutely. I do want to mention the episode that we released today on Missing Maura Murray was about the unsolved murder of Molly Bish. She was 16 when she went missing from Commons Pond in Warren, Massachusetts in 2000. Her body was found about 3 years later, about 5 miles away, or a little less, maybe 2.5 miles away. And the case has sort of dragged on since. And we spoke to Heather Bish in this week's episode of Missing Maura Murray, who is Molly's sister, who was, I think she said 23 at the time of her sister's disappearance. Mm-hmm. And it's a tragic story, and it really hits home for us being in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Right. But those are the stories that are crucial at the end of the day.
Yeah, that was the first case that I had ever heard of as far as something that was so, close to home, just being in Massachusetts and even New England. And I guess it just felt like really surreal. So getting the opportunity to talk to Heather and hear her story I know it's stuck with Tim and it's stuck with me as well. I can't get it out of my head. Like your documentary is about the victims. Morph just said more projects need to be victim focused. If anybody hasn't heard this interview with Heather Bish, she goes into details that I had never read before. Details about how her brother just wouldn't stop diving into the pond to try to find her, and the cops had to pull him out of the pond. And it's no one finds that. No, I don't want to say that. That is where the real story is. The real story is in how someone like Israel Keyes was so clever because he could bury all these kill kits, and now we can make like a fictional character about him. A pretty well produced HBO docuseries or something like that. Right. No one wants to see the pain.
And I got that feedback. I've gotten that feedback from major companies that did screen, Theodore when it was a couple years ago, and that was the first thing they said. They were like, "Well, this is good, but we don't really want to walk people through that pain again." And in that moment, I knew that's not where it's supposed to be. Because again, and that's the important part of it, though, is that 40 plus years later, these families are still in pain. They still want answers. As I mentioned in the interview we did, a couple months prior to that, I went to a memorial for one of the children victims, and their family is still crying at that memorial, asking for answers. They had present day detectives looking for tips still. That's the problem. And with another documentary that came out that had a similar vision, I've been getting the feedback of somebody already did that. The victims' families already spoke. How many victims did he have? And how many families didn't get the opportunity to speak? So that was my argument too and there's other survivors that still need to speak. Kathy Kleiner is one of my major survivors in that story. But again, just as you guys are saying, her story is not going to be a fluff piece. Her story is brutal and upsetting, and we're both crying together talking about this because it's traumatizing. But I feel like this, because I don't know Molly's case. So someone like me who's in Utah who doesn't know it, and I'm sitting in the Lori Vallow world of everything, I don't know these stories, but they're still just as important as this Vallow case. You know what I mean? Like it frustrates me that people have that commentary and tell me that what I've done is done, but they don't really know what I'm bringing to the table and what the conversation is actually going to be.
Yeah, that's absolute bullshit that you're told. No one wants to hear that any, like the victims had their say, and no one wants to hear that anymore. They've already, no one wants to hear that. So we're going to go do the trope of superhero serial killer Ted Bundy, because the victims already spoke, and you only need to hear that. I loved what you said about it being brutal. Some of the stuff that Heather said, and some of the interviews that you've done, it's brutal. And you have to come to terms with that in order to heal. And one of the things that I told Tim offline was one thing that really impressed me about Heather, and one thing that impresses me about you with your title change to Killing Theodore, is that Heather and you are embracing sort of this, like, an anger. It's okay to be angry about this. You have to be angry about it. If you're not, then you're just repressing it. And then you're kind of dead. You might as well not have that feeling anymore. And Heather showed some anger, and when she did, I was like, oh, that's amazing that she can say that son of a bitch who did this, and it was bullshit that this happened, and instead of saying, well, I've just come down, I've come to terms with it, and I'm forgiving people. Like, that irritates me so much because it's almost like, no, you're not doing what it. I don't, all victims should have their own way to grieve, but don't let people off the hook. Don't
exactly.
Yeah, don't let the bad guys off the hook. Like,
exactly. It's not a fluff piece. I'm not looking to make a fluff piece. That's not the point of this project. The point is to bring the gruesome facts to everybody, to understand the current struggle today. And as I've mentioned before, I can't remember. I don't think I even sent you guys the little sizzle that we did. I can't even remember. I know Morph saw it.
Morph sees everything.
Morph, right. He just, So, but, but a lot of the feedback really is, you see how angry all of my subjects are. I mean, well, you've got Cloyd who calls him a piece of shit. And I can't even tell you how many DMs I got, again, from people who still, want to praise Bundy, and they're like, how dare you post something like that? How can you call him a piece of shit? Because I don't want to hear that he's hot anymore. He is a piece of shit. He was a murderer. He murdered children. He was a pedophile. What the fuck are you talking about? So that's where, again, like I said, you're going to hear a little bit more from me. I was really resistant about having my voice put into this, but I think it's crucial to know, as a filmmaker, that my frustrations from what I've been watching and seeing some of my ideas manifest in other projects, I have to speak out somewhere about it. And again, just having people understand that this process, like, I'm in therapy to recover from some of these interviews, because they were not easy to do. And we'll be doing some spin-off documentaries off of Killing Theodore on some current modern day murders. So there's more to come.
Oh, that's very cool.
Like other victims of him, or other murders and murderers?
Other murders, yeah.
About
so
oh, okay. I thought you meant about how good looking he was.
yeah, that's just gonna be my focus from here on out. It's just looking at all the hot murderers and making content.
Oh yeah, and rating them against Bundy. Exactly. Bundy, because obviously he's a 10, right?
Right. You can't get hotter than that.
No.
Ugh,
Sorry.
No.
Just kidding.
Bundy goes to 11.
Yeah.
Vomit. Yeah. So no. So different. I'm currently working on a pre-production. Its working title is called She Was Loved. And if people have been following our socials or myself on social media, I've been pretty vocal about what's been going on at my alma mater's campus, the University of Utah, and a lot of the sex crimes that have been going on, as well as a murder of a student by the name of Lauren McCluskey. So my focus is really going to be tackling, again, what is going on campuses, obviously not right now, but the U of U had 4 murders in under 2.5 years on that campus. So it hit close to home. There's a correlation with Killing Theodore and Lauren's story, and so it's that's been kind of in the early works. And then Amanda's Mom, which is the project that I'm working on with Sarah Kalin from HLN's Hell in the Heartland, and things have been progressing so well on that. We are getting antsy to go out there and to Alabama. And again, another documentary solely focused on a victim and a child searching for answers for her mother. So I'm really excited for these upcoming projects. So yeah.
Do you feel like you're putting yourself, I guess, in a little bit of harm's way? I know Bundy's obviously not here, but I'm sure you're talking to people who know that their attacker is still around, and you know that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't speak too much on it, but yes, I've had to actually change my mailing address to a PO box because I started receiving fan mail.
Oh no.
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. But yeah, so I mean, it is definitely a little scary, especially with the U of U. Because I have gone public locally here about it and about the situation that I was in on campus. And so I have been contacted by authorities and whatnot. And, but again, being an investigative journalist, it comes with the territory. And I'm learning how to not be afraid of that and not be afraid to speak out, because that's the other thing in Killing Theodore. I'm going to be talking about some of these people that are seen as heroes in the Bundy story that are not heroes, and uncovering some horrible, horrible things that was swept under the rug and nobody has talked about it. So it's a part of the game, and it's a part of the investigative side. Again, I'm not just here to tell stories anymore. I'm here to actually do something about them. So.
Okay. And how do you then continue the relationship with these victims and the family members of victims? You said that, and I think you were serious. You said that you were in therapy. You were taking some because of all of the research and all of the work that you've done. I'm sure part of that therapy is hearing these stories directly from the victim, like a victim's sister or the mother.
Yep.
How do you continue to follow up with these people and not think like, okay, this is gonna be the worst part of my day? And I don't want to sound crass at all, but like,
right.
It has to give you a sinking feeling, right?
Yeah. I mean, for example, I'll take Amanda's mom. So when Sarah and I went to Toronto and sat down with Lee Meller, that was the first time I saw the crime scene photos of the case that we're focusing on. And I think my very first therapy session, I talked about the photos. And I made sure my therapist was okay with me talking about such crass things, because I thought to myself, like, oh shit, she's, you know, I'm going to freak her out. But she actually turned out to be a true crime fan. So that was okay. But I have to honestly remember what the focus is. I didn't sign up to be a cop or a detective or anything like that. So seeing these things, it's a gut punch, and you can't get those images out of your head. You know, same thing when I sat down, for example, so when I did Kathy Kleiner Rubin's interview, we went out to dinner the night before. Her husband and I and Timothy, we, you know, went out to dinner. It was actually Halloween in Louisiana. We actually went out to the French Quarters and had a blast afterwards. But it allowed us to create a connection that whatever she told me was going to be a little bit more, it would hit closer to home for me to understand this is someone that I care about now. This is somebody that we just had dinner with, and we just went and did shots at a bar, you know, and having this best time, like the best time. But I heard from Kathy yesterday, you know, and it's so weird for me to think like her life was impacted by this horrible person, but it's still on me when the day comes, when her story is out, that we put a lot of focus on what she's gone through, what she continues to go through. If people follow her, they know that she still has to have surgeries on her jaw, that, you know, Bundy bashed in her face and whatnot. And I had to take a break during our interview because the questions got so brutal and upsetting. And she said she never cried in a single interview, and mine is the only one that she's actually cried in, because we had that connection.
That's interesting. Shannon has a interesting point that she writes here. The trust they must put into Saleem sharing their stories. Do you go into it saying this is how I'm going to earn their trust, or do you have a technique, or is it just like I'm going in there honestly and genuinely?
Both of those things. Honestly and genuinely, and then I try to spend a little time with them before we film, so that they can get to know me, so that they can get to know Timothy. Although when we went to Florida, we didn't get that chance, but we actually spent some time after the interview. For example, Bob Deacle, who was a phenomenal man, he prosecuted the Kimberly Leach case. And after we did all of our filming, which was like a 6-hour day, he took us to a bar. We hung out, we had some sandwiches in good old town of Lake City, Florida. But, you know, but these people, the connection that I have with them, the point I was trying to make was I'm not just another film crew coming in and trying to get your salacious stories. I'm here to understand you, and I want to be here for you. So I heard from Ken Kitsaras about a month ago, and my relationship with him is just so phenomenal. And I know, again, a lot of people kind of make him into this person because of the indictment reading. I mean, he was an extremely wicked, and how they portrayed him, and that was very interesting. But he's such a loving and caring person, and the conversations that we were able to have. He also gave the I don't know, I don't want to toot my own horn, but he said that basically our interview was the best interview he has ever done in his career, because I was able to pull things out of him that nobody else has been able to, connecting with him on a level that, again, that's just not been there for other projects. So I think when people see that we have some of the same individuals in some of the other documentaries, they're going to be surprised at the level of conversation that we have, because it's so much more lax, and they're divulging a lot more information that the other ones did not get. So I think people will feel that connection between my subjects and I greatly over anything else that they've seen.
Do you have any plans to do a book or something to interviews into some sort of print?
Podcast?
Oh my gosh, I've been asked to do a podcast during this journey. Just my EP, she bugs me all the time. Start a podcast. I want to take some time to really focus on the next few projects, and then I will look into it. But I think, you know, especially because Amanda's Mom is going to be such a different shift from what I've been doing with Killing Theodore, and it already has been. I want to kind of see how that goes. But for example, Amanda is our main character, and me, her, and Sarah already have such a great bond. And, you know, I look at Amanda as a friend now versus that she's going to be our subject. But it's important, again, like I said, to really connect with the people that you're sharing their stories with. And it's not just about trust, but I genuinely care about these people, and that will go for the rest of my life. I love them. I tell them I love them. We call ourselves the Theodore family. This horrible person brought us all together, and we're here to make the best content that we can.
Yeah. And it shows, you know, people feel that, you know, when you're passionate about something, they feel it, whether it's through a podcast, through a documentary, or whatever.
Right.
So, and on the flip side, if you're inauthentic, that will show at some point, you know? So obviously you're in it for the right reasons, as am I. But I'm still not sure about Lance.
Money.
That's all that it is.
Right. I'll tell you, we've been batting around an idea for a podcast you'd be perfect for. No one else has done this. This is a podcast where you contact incarcerated killers, mass murderers, and you form a communication with them, and you assemble this all of this content for years, and then you release it in podcast form, and you have a partner that you co-host with that just doesn't seem to exist outside of the podcast. So we'll talk offline about this. This is a great idea.
Pitch it to me. Well, that was actually a consideration when we were, I don't know if you guys know, but Gary Ridgway was a big fan of Bundy, and there was a point where a company suggested that I actually met with Ridgway and talked about Bundy with him, and I contemplated it, and then I just thought to myself, I can't.
Well, I was just being sarcastic. Chris Duet is in this room right here, and he's got Criminal Perspective, and he does that. Right. And I don't know if he's talked to Ridgway. He's talked to so many people, but I think the two of you should somehow get together for a show, because it's like both ends of the spectrum. You know, as about as hardcore of the perpetrator and as emotional of like the victim on this side. I think that would make a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, well, I will say they've done a few. The show's called Criminal Perspective, so you hear it firsthand from the criminal, which is so interesting and unique, I think. But he'll also, you know, him and Andrew will also do episodes called Survivor's Perspective, that do kind of focus really very similar lines of what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check those out. That's very interesting. Yeah.
And oh, go ahead.
I just have a kind of a sort of an unrelated question, but you make documentaries. Is there anything that's happened recently? Any documentary that's been produced recently that has really captivated you?
Well, so I was at Sundance before all this went down. And I saw so many, and I'm so excited to talk about some of them. The biggest one that I think will honestly turn into the height of abducted in plain sight, not to that wild level of stuff, but I mean, just straight up, just craziness. It's called Into the Deep, and it is about the individual who murdered Kim Wall, the investigative journalist. I don't want to say anything more than that, because it is so bonkers. And the last scene, the whole theater, I went to the premiere, the whole theater just ended in a gasp. And full-blown chills. I mean, it is going to be just probably, it'll alter the true crime documentary genre, honestly. Like, it's going to be insane for everyone to see. There was another documentary titled Us Kids, and it was directed by Kim A. Snyder, who actually was the director that gave me the idea of Killing Theodore initially, because she did a documentary on Newtown. on the Sandy Hook children, and she now did one for why am I blanking? Parkland.
Oh,
the Parkland
right.
kids.
Yep.
And again, went to the premiere of that. I got to chat with her. But again, it's just something so important that I think everyone needs to watch, and the conversation of gun violence and how both sides are trying to work with each other. It's just so inspiring. And On the Record, which will be out at the end of this month on HBO Max, Drew Dixon, I have to give her a shout out. This is kind of the, not kind of, it is like the Me Too story of Russell Simmons, which got a lot of heat during Sundance, but if you've watched Surviving R. Kelly or Leaving Neverland, you have to add this one to your list. It's probably one of the better ones, and I just want to emphasize how important it is to hear these survivor stories, especially women of color, because they usually don't get that platform. So it is very crucial and imperative that, you know, you support them. And again, Drew Dixon is a queen. Her history with hip hop music, if you're a hip hop fan from the 90s, it's wild. She's phenomenal. So I have to shout out those. I don't really want to talk about Tiger King though.
What, Tiger? There was nothing else aside from Tiger King.
That was a trap. That was Lance. This whole time was like, I gotta get Celine's opinion on Tiger King.
I know we've gone too long without talking about Tiger King.
42 minutes of build up for this moment. You can't just.
I knew
No
it was
Tiger
coming.
King.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
No. It was good. It was good.
It was good. It was okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
No, but my exec producer is actually working on the Discovery ID discussion about Joe Exotic, but also putting that focus on Carol Baskin, as well as Don Lewis's disappearance. So I think people are going to get a little bit more into that versus looking at all the other characters in that story. So
Yeah.
hugging for her. But other than that, yeah, my contact's been pretty basic. Obviously.
That's hilarious. Other than that, you just gave like the rundown of half a dozen brilliant documentaries.
Yeah. This,
And ended that with Tiger King.
Yeah.
This Into the Deep movie sounds amazing about Kim Wall. Yeah, I do remember that story when it broke because it was just crazy. She went missing on a submarine. That doesn't, that's
Oh,
not
there's
really.
so much I want to say.
Yeah.
We're going to have a conversation after this comes out because I chatted with the director afterwards, and we actually were both in tears at the end and hugging each other because she too said that she started going to therapy after doing this documentary. So her and I had the conversation of, as documentarians, we have to talk about that. You have to talk about the trauma you're enduring for others in order to portray that. So she very much is in that same headspace as I am in terms of making sure nothing is frou-frou for everyone. Like, this is it. This is the brutal fact. So I'm excited for you guys to see that.
When did that happen? That was in like 2018 or something?
2017.
2017?
2017. Uh-huh. Yeah. I think in the fall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wild story.
That was that
Tragic.
that's like oh my God.
So
The
she was
body
a
parts and
journalist.
stuff.
So,
Yeah.
so I know Celine's not gonna want to say much, but she was a journalist doing a story on this inventor who invented this submarine, if I'm not mistaken, or built this specific submarine, and she went on his vessel with her and did not come back. And I believe, I'm not sure if they found parts of her or if he admitted to what he did. I don't even know. Apparently,
let me preface it this way. I will just say that the documentary that she did was not on Kim Wall. She started this documentary a year and a half prior to her going missing. So technically, the documentary was about the inventor guy. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. So it wasn't even supposed to be what it is.
Oh my God, I can't.
So
yeah, it's going to be great.
After I saw it, I was like, who do I talk to? There's no one I could talk to about this, and I have to keep it to myself for months.
Ugh.
So,
well, you can
hopefully
tell
coming
us
this summer.
Yeah, you could,
It's
What?
just us here.
Yeah.
No big deal.
once we stop
I
rolling.
don't want to spoiler it, but yeah. no.
Rebecca asked if it was in Scandinavia. Was this in Sweden?
Lance's
I want to say
homeland.
yes. Possibly. I think so. I think it is.
I think the
My motherland.
Yeah.
the
It
engineer
was
guy.
somewhere.
Yeah, the inventor is Danish, and
I
the
was gonna
journalist
say-
is Swedish.
Let me.
So
see.
yeah, you're
Well,
you're in the right
it's
range
close to
there
that.
geographically.
You're in that. You're in that geographic range.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Danish submarine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
I wanted to run back to the Molly Bish case real quick because it is still so relevant to the topic at hand tonight, and that Lance, Heather and their family, isn't it inspiring how they won't stop fighting and the ways that they keep trying. And so, Celine, now they're working on a bill with some politicians in the state of Massachusetts to allow law enforcement to use familial DNA sites to search for violent offenders, so the police can go arrest them.
Right.
How much sense does that make? Is it too sensible for the goddamn state to say okay?
I mean, again,
Tim just
as we
broke.
know, no, and it's important and it's crucial, and again, the GSK case changed all of that. But it's an interesting conversation to have with other people who feel like, that's taking advantage of, of their identity and blah 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 blah. Like, who cares?
Just violent
Do what
offender.
you can to get right.
I mean, I think
God.
that's what the bill is specifically focused on. Is
Right,
I think previously violent offenders. So
Yeah.
or violent
Yeah,
crime,
that's-
I guess. Sorry, I don't know all the
Mhm.
I don't know all the lingo. I'm not Senator Ann Goby.
Nobody's Senator Ann Goby.
Right.
But you're
Yeah.
right, Tim. Like the lengths in which the Bish family goes to help other people. I mean, not at the least the Molly Bish Center at Anna Marie College, which focuses on protecting children and the elderly. They could have easily gone down the road of despair and depression and anger and just all of that rolled up, and that wouldn't have done any good. But they want to figure out a way for something to come out of this that is good. When you talk to victims of, say, Ted Bundy or their family members, are they inspired by what you're trying to do? Do you get the impression that they want to do something better because they can't help what happened? They can't change what he did, right? So they have to make it better. Do you have both ends of that? Do you have the people who have hit rock bottom and they're like, I give up? And you have the people who want to do something, like try to pass a familial DNA bill?
You also have to remember these individuals are also in a totally different generation. So a lot of that they're not too familiar with. But I know some of the PDs that I have spoken to, they have explained the familial DNA situation. So I can talk about one thing that we are covering in the documentary because it was public solely just in Utah. The disappearance of Debbie Kent here in Utah. Bundy actually, during his actual confessions about trying to locate where the bodies were for the detectives in other states, he gave a description of the location that Debbie was potentially in. They go up and they do find remains, but again, this was 1989, 1990, I think, when this happened. So they didn't have the DNA advancement to actually test that at that time. So we met with Detective Shane Alexander last April, and in 2015, he started going through their cold cases, realized that these advancements for DNA, there was something that they could potentially do because at the time that those remains were found, they found a patella, and they gave Debbie's mom, Belva, a piece of that patella. And so she was holding on to it. They never really knew if that was, again, Debbie. So Detective Alexander calls her up one day and says, hey, you know, we have the advancements to potentially test this if this is her. She was very hesitant because, again, all these years she held on to that and thinking that that was Debbie. So she didn't want to know if that actually was or wasn't. But she said, you know, I will give this to you, but I don't want to know the outcome. So I believe Detective Shane then went and got the patella, did the testing, met with one of Debbie's siblings, got the familial DNA. They did all of that, and it came back and it was Debbie. And just the coverage of that story is so heartbreaking and exciting because she got the answer, but the family didn't want to broadcast this nationwide at the time. But I think now we kind of need to, because again, there's still families that don't have the answers. And I do have some information about remains sitting in these medical examiner offices that haven't been tested. And this is a conversation I've been having with Billy Jensen over the course of the year of what can I do to push them to get this testing? Obviously it's money and whatnot, but there's a lot of politics that happened way back in the 70s that are still kind of happening now that I'm trying to poke the bear and get that testing done, because I want that closure for these families, even if it's just the siblings because these parents have passed on. You know, but that's the importance to me of having the conversation with these families that still have their daughters or siblings missing. There's possibilities today that this can still happen. So that's kind of, again, what we're covering in terms of victim conversations. And again, people telling me that this has been done. No, that hasn't been done. That hasn't been covered. So we'll see what happens. But
it's amazing. And also, I thought we were going to get through an hour without mentioning Billy Jensen. Ugh.
Sorry.
Jesus, some people have said that Tim and I are the poor man's Jensen and Holes.
Billy and Paul.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that, actually.
Exactly. Oh, Shannon, like I think about that just randomly, that we're the poor man's Jensen. Like, I can't even say it right now because I'm gonna start laughing because you don't need money to listen to either one of us. Like, there's no. It's not like.
Yeah, no.
Like one or the other has to be, you know, wealthier.
No, but honestly, but in all truth, I have been talking to Paul Holes about this for the past 2 years, trying to figure out how do I do this on this side as a filmmaker? Yeah. How can I make that impact? But the reason I reached out to Billy initially was because he did that thread with the Bundy victims when the documentary came out last year. And he put that out there. I will put money towards this if anybody has any information. And so I thought, hey, let me contact Billy. But you know what? Billy and Paul are phenomenal, but you guys are right up there.
Well, no,
I'm not playing favorites. Oh, I'm not playing favorites.
Oh, start.
But,
I'm not.
No, they're really great. Billy Jensen. Anytime we give someone shit is because we just love them. You know, it's all out of endearment. Right. What he did with his Facebook geotargeting is like very. Oh my god, it's so smart.
Yeah. And it seems so simple and obvious, but no one was doing it until he did it. And we've adopted it at Private Investigations for the Missing. Check it out at investigations.forthemissing.org. And Jillian here in the chat room has set up some of those where they'll geotarget right in the area of where, you know, the crime took place or the person went missing. So
Right.
in theory, all the person's friends and their surrounding neighbors will all see it and know what's up with that person or what's going on, in the
Wow.
case, because some people just don't know about the case,
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
Right.
Oh man, we have 3 minutes left and we didn't even open up this other spot. Should we open up this spot for
Let's
just
do
a
it.
couple minutes here?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Oops, it is open now. All right.
Who wants to grab it?
Ooh.
Look at
I
them
want to
all.
mention.
All grabbing it.
I want to quickly mention Empty Frames season 3 episode 1 coming Tuesday to the airwaves, and that is our art crime show. I think episode 1 is going to make a big splash. There's a part in episode 1 where our guest Casey Sherman, who's a prolific author, he wrote a book called Bad Blood that we spoke about on Missing More Murray, because what he wrote about took place in Franconia, New Hampshire. It's this incredible moment where a police officer sort of kind of backed a young guy into sort of like a driveway, and the guy, the cop got out, pepper sprayed the kid, Lico Kenny, in the face. Lico Kenny shot the officer, Bruce McKay, and then ran him over. And then Greg Floyd happened to be watching or around, and he went over to Officer Bruce McKay, picked up the gun, and shot Lico Kenny and killed him. So 2 dead people and 1 person alive who, is sort of this vigilante figure who, is a bit of a loon himself with a crazy criminal record. And so our guest actually had a run-in with this guy in a bathroom at the courthouse before he absolutely freaked out after he lost a case for harassing his neighbor with a gun. It's some elderly neighbor. And it's pretty wild. You can actually see a bunch of pictures of this on Google, and it's wild.
It's actually
Wow.
It's bananas, because we weren't even really talking about. We spoke to Casey about the story, but when he brought this up, it wasn't in direct connection to the conversation we were having. We asked the question because he does a lot of investigative reporting, and we asked a question similar to the question that we asked you, which is, do you ever feel like you might be in danger, or you've pushed it a little too far? And we said, well, he's writing a book on Whitey Bulger, and he's sort of got himself into the Irish mob and the Boston mob to get stories about Whitey. His aunt was actually one of the last confessed victims of Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler. So he's always sort of in the circle of violence. And we said, is there any situation that you were ever in where you felt like your life was threatened? And without hesitation, he said, Greg Floyd in the bathroom up in New Hampshire. No, he didn't even hesitate. No question. He said that guy was, if he wasn't in a courthouse, that would have gone a lot differently. And as is Casey Sherman, like, he's kind of a badass, like, investigative journalist and writer. He doesn't really, he doesn't really proceed with a lot of, he kind of reckless abandon is how he proceeds.
He's not shy. He's not shy. Hence, approaching Greg Floyd in the bathroom in the courthouse.
Bananas.
Well,
that is wild.
I didn't really catch that the first time I heard it, but in retrospect, like, it's a little confrontational, obviously, but also, but how else is it gonna go? Like, he knew how it was gonna go with Floyd. Like, it went really badly 10 minutes later, after the judge gave him the after he was convicted. The guy started swinging his cane around and had to be taken out of the court. So,
and one of the scariest parts about that is Casey really didn't say anything to him in the bathroom. He said he introduced himself and then was like kind of asking, do you have a comment, or what, how do you feel about it? He really didn't even get to a point. And Greg Floyd flew off the handle to the point where he felt like he was being seriously threatened. The other thing about Greg Floyd is that his son was with him when that all went down. This what we call the trifecta of violence up in Franconia. His son was in the car with him, or in his truck with him when he got out.
I thought.
Oh, he was driving. He was driving the truck. Yeah. And then Greg Floyd blasts away at Lico Kenny, then dares the passenger in the car to pick up the gun. dares him to pick up the gun because he wants an excuse to shoot him. And then the police show up and he tells the cop who shows up, "Careful, son, I'm quicker than you are," before he puts the gun on the ground and lets them arrest him. Yeah. Goddamn maniac.
Wow. Wild.
Yeah.
But hey,
and I can't believe I just said God. He's probably watching, and I'm going to lock all my doors.
Hey, live free
Which
or
won't
die.
help.
Live free or die. It's New Hampshire. I think they were at one point we're going to name like a park after him. Like protests or you know.
Well, you're right.
Yeah, no, they were. They actually he was viewed as a hero initially.
Because he killed a cop killer.
Yeah, which, you know, in fairness, there's something to that for sure. But yes, everything that happened afterwards and his track record and him admitting, or I think he said during those interviews with police, I believe he said that he's killed like 40 something people. And
yeah, I think he was including his time in the service, right?
Yeah, he used to kill for the government, I think he said. So I don't think they necessarily took that seriously, or they just assumed he meant knew he meant his time in the service. I don't know. But
wow.
Not a guy with a high regard for life. But anyway.
And what makes that story even crazier is the cop, Bruce McKay, Bruce McKay was not the best guy either. If you Google or if you YouTube Bruce McKay pepper spray, you'll see some pretty disgusting videos. I wouldn't actually don't Google. Yeah. Don't.
I won't.
Anyway, love your shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes.
It is.
Wonderful.
Gotta represent.
Very good. Well, where can we find your work, Celine Beth Calderon? It's past the witching hour. We've got to go, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can follow us on Twitter. Twitter is Theodore Doc. Instagram and Facebook is Killing Theodore. Or you can find us on Tumblr that I don't really update too much, which is also Killing Theodore now. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Saleem Bish. But yeah, I'm always happy to answer anybody's questions about the project. So feel free to shoot me a DM. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me again. This was a lot of fun and glad to see your faces this time. So.
Oh yeah, finally.
Right?
Yeah,
I know.
A lot of fun.
So many failed attempts. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Awesome. But yeah.
And thanks to
All right,
everyone
guys,
joining in the chat room.
Exactly. Bye, guys.
All right.